Hello everybody. Thank you very much, Dan, for that introduction and that round of applause. That was very pleasant. And also thanks for coming tonight. I know the island is on TV, so I nearly didn't make it myself. Best show ever. So tonight I'm going to talk to you about WordPress theme structure. Specifically, I'm going to talk to you about the theme structure that I'm using on my WordPress sites these days. Hopefully this is going to make your theme development a bit more efficient, a bit more organized, and possibly even a bit more fun, because WordPress theme development should be fun. It's certainly the most enjoyable part of what I do for a living. It's going to be aimed at kind of beginner, intermediate developers. Hopefully other people will get something from it too. So what is a theme? In the words of the great Codex, WordPress themes are files that work together to create the design and functionality of a WordPress site. Each theme may be different, offering many choices for site owners to instantly change their website look. I'm sure we're all kind of vaguely aware of what a theme is. But what's kind of important here, a couple of things. I mentioned both design and functionality, but also that website look is really what a theme should be all about, and we're going to go into a little bit more detail on that in a moment. So what I'm going to cover tonight, I'm going to talk about things you should be considering whenever you're putting together your theme structure, what should go into a WordPress theme, and almost as importantly, what should be left out. And then I'm going to talk you through my basic file and folder structure, so specifically assets, functions, page templates, template parts, and theme wrappers. So a little bit about me. My name is Keith Devon. I've been a freelance WordPress developer for 5 or 6 years now. I'm currently kind of in a transition between freelancing and setting up my own little small agency. So I'm actually really interested to talk to any kind of freelance developers in the room. I primarily build custom WordPress websites, but that normally involves building a custom theme. My focus is on performance, SEO, and business goals. Contact details are at the bottom there. I deliberately left my website off because I'm embarrassed by it at the moment. But feel free to go to keithdevon.com. It will be updated sometime in the next 5 years, I'm sure. Okay. So, things to consider. These are things that I think are important when talking about theme development. The main thing for me is development speed. Now, if I can develop themes faster, I can effectively make more money. But also I can provide more value to my clients at the same time. So in terms of development speed, I like to keep things modular. I want things to be reusable. I want my themes to be RI, so that stands for don't repeat yourself, so as little duplicate code as possible. And I want it to be lightweight. There are some crazily bloated themes these days. I want mine to be as lightweight as possible. The less code there is, the less the overall cost of ownership of that code. I also want my themes to be high performance themes, so I'm talking about site speed, search engine optimization, like getting some of the best practices for SEO like baked into that theme from the start, and also accessibility. A couple of other things to think about are collaboration. So by standardizing like a theme structure, you can start to collaborate more easily by using things like a set, like coding standards. It makes sense to use the WordPress coding standards. And also things like keeping things intuitively named. So I'm talking about directory names, file names, function names, variable names, all things like that. And the last point here, for me, the work that I tend to do tends to be quite like fire and forget. So a client will come, commission a website, I'll work on that website, I'll launch it, and I tend to kind of not never hear from them again. There's often repeat work, but it's kind of that fire and forget thing. And what I've wanted to do with my business is to build something that's kind of mine, that kind of grows and develops over time. Like an asset almost, and I'm working on a starter theme, which I've started to do recently. Has allowed me to do that. It's allowed me that sense of growth and progression and evolution. Okay, so what to include in a WordPress theme and what to leave out. So themes are primarily for front-end display, visual enhancements, and I think I've thrown navigation in there as well. What I would separate out into plugins, and this isn't always something that I've always done. I used to put custom post types and taxonomies and things right into the theme because I thought this theme that I'm building is so ingrained into the whole WordPress website that they're never going to want to change the theme, but people are going to want to change the themes. So your content structure shouldn't be part of that. You should be able to change your WordPress theme without all of your custom post types and taxonomies and everything just disappearing. So those kind of things should go in plugins. And also other functionality and logic, things like API integrations should go in there as well. So, quick look at my theme structure. Now I know that's going to be hard to read. Don't worry about reading all that, and that's what I'm going to be going through. That's kind of a basic theme structure too. So there's loads of files there that are missing. There's no archive.php and things, but that's just kind of an indication of the structure that I use these days for my themes. So let's take a look at assets first. So by assets, I'm talking about CSS, JavaScript, images, potentially fonts as well. I use an assets folder just basically to keep things organized. You quite often see like these three directories in the root directory. They're fine. I mean, they can live there. That's fine. It's kind of personal preference. But I like to keep things organized, keep my root directory nice and clean. I use preprocessors. I'm sure most people are using something like Sass or less these days. And I've played with a few different task runners these days. So things like Grunt, Gulp, Mixture, CodeKit. I've had a bit of experience with Gulp, Mixture, and CodeKit. I'm currently using CodeKit. I find that to be a good solution for me. So let's take a look at the CSS. So I'm using Sass. I've played about with less a little bit too, and it was great. They're very, very similar, but I kind of feel that Sass is kind of winning the race overall in the web industry. So I've kind of settled on that one for now. Bourbon and Neat. Bourbon is a mixin library, a Sass mixin library from guys called Thoughtbot. It's well maintained. Loads of really useful stuff in there. Neat is a grid system that sits on top of Bourbon. I use CodeKit as my kind of task runner. It does all that kind of cool stuff for me. Like it handles Sass for me. It actually pulls in Bourbon for me without me having to install like a Ruby gem or anything like that. So using these kind of tools really speeds up my development. So CSS, you know, it gives me access to variables and functions and mixins within CSS. It also has big performance wins because you can do things like concatenate all your CSS files and minify them. So ideally I'm just going to have one CSS file I put in my theme, keeping the HTTP requests down and keeping things really fast. And it also helps keep things modular. I'm going to show you that in a minute. We're going to dig into the SCSS directory. And what actually ends up happening is that my style.css file that has to exist in a WordPress theme directory doesn't actually have any CSS in it at all. So I use that purely for the theme information, like the theme name, the author, the theme description, and everything like that. So there's no CSS in that file at all. So as I said, I use Sass, and I use the .scss version of Sass, so that all those files sit in this folder. This helps to keep my CSS modular, which helps keep it reusable. I tend to use these three subdirectories, so base, modules, and templates. Base is for kind of site-wide styling, so things like your overall variables, your typography, general typography rules, your general layout rules. Modules I like to use for like specific like UI elements. So if you had a slider, like an accordion or some kind of drop down or something, I'll keep those in modules. And templates are for specific page template styling. The project.scss file at the top there is the one that it's like the master file, and that's the one that gets processed and turned into my CSS file. So I just do this. That is what my project.scss file looks like. The top line there is actually kind of CodeKit specific. So CodeKit knows that when I say @import bourbon neat, it goes and grabs all of that stuff for me, and it's all available to me right away without me having to install anything else, which is super useful. And then those next 3 lines are basically just saying, go to the base directory, combine all those, process all that, go to the import one, combine all that. So all of this gets concatenated, minified, and output into my CSS folder as project.css. And that's what I use in the front end of the theme. I think that's everything from there. So JavaScript, it's very similar to my Sass structure. Again, I'm using CodeKit. I'm using that to concatenate and minify the files. Again, you could use a task runner like gulp or grunt if you wanted to. Ideally, I like to have 2 JavaScript files output in my themes, so one in the head, one in the footer, just to keep things nice and fast. So let's look at the JavaScript directory. Again, it's quite similar to the SCSS one. There's a couple of differences. You can see these are the 2 files, like the 2 kind of master files. And header.js might look something like this. So again, this is CodeKit specific code. That's all I need to have in header.js to actually go and grab the modernizer.js file. And then if I wanted to add more files to that, I could even use jQuery here, so I would just put source/jQuery.js. It would combine that into one file. And I'll have one sitting in the header, one sitting in the footer. And also something to note here that's really useful is that I've got this modules folder again, and what I like to do is to keep my files that are in each of my modules folders named the same. So if I have a testimonial on the site and that testimonial needs certain styling, it needs certain interaction from the JavaScript, they'll both share that same name, so I can kind of grab those as a reusable chunk. Okay, functions. So some functions files look a bit like that. And that's not even that bad, that's only 540 lines of code or something like that, which isn't horrendous. But ideally I want to probably work with files that are around about 100 lines of code, just to keep things easy. This is super basic stuff. Break your functions up into files. Don't just chuck every function into your functions.php file. It is a nightmare to try to find out. If you're bug fixing something or want to change something in a function, to be hit with this absolutely enormous file that you've got to try to find your function in. So all you need to do is split out your functions into separate files, use as many of those as you need, keep them nice and logically grouped, and then just include them from your functions.php. It is easy. So your functions.php file can now look something like this. Nice and clean and modular, and again, if you have some really useful functions that you want to use on your next project, they're much easier to find because you just grab one of those files. Of these, the ones that I'm going to talk about a bit more are the scripts.php, and we'll come to wrapper in a minute. So scripts.php. Again, this is pretty basic theming stuff, but I think it's worth repeating that you should be using these enqueue functions for your style sheets and your scripts. So people still add scripts and styles directly to their like head.php or header.php or things like that. What did I press? Yes. Okay. So you should be using these WP-enqueue script and WP-enqueue style functions. And this is also an opportunity to add a little bit of cache busting, so I'll try and explain that situation. I don't know if it's happened to many of you guys, but it happens to me, well, it used to happen to me all the time where a client would ask me to make a change to a website, and I would make the change, I'd push it up to the live site, I'd test it, it's working, looks great, send the email to the client, and I'd be like, just fix that bug, and like, check it out. And an hour later I get an email back saying, no, it's still there, it's not working. And what inevitably it was is that it was a browser caching issue. So your style sheet has been cached by the browser. They're still seeing the old version of it. A really easy fix is this. Someone tell me if that's a terrible way to do things, but I think it works pretty well. Look at you there, Scott. So basically what this is doing, it's your standard WPMQ style function, but the kind of magic is happening over on the file end time, over on the right there. So what that's doing is it's looking at the time that that file was last modified, and it's creating a string out of that timestamp, and that is being used as a version number for that file. So every time that you change your style sheet, that's going to be updated, and so the browser is going to know that it doesn't have the most recent version of it cached, and it'll go and get the right one. So you never have those kind of refreshing conversations with clients that I seem to have so often. So hopefully that little trick will help out a little bit. Page templates. So I think, and please someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that your main page templates have to exist in the theme root. Is that right? They have to live there. So I'm talking about things like index.php, page.php, archive.php, tag.php, whatever, single, whatever they are. They have to live in the root, which is a shame, I think, but they do.
You could filter the functionality as well.
Yeah. But one thing we can do is with custom page templates, so I'm talking about the type of page template where at the top you write template name, colon, whatever. For those types of page templates, you can actually put them in a subdirectory, and you can call it whatever you want, but page templates seems to make a bit of sense. That is, I guess, I don't want to say controversial, it's not controversial, but people have different opinions on whether that's the best way to do things, because some people think if it's a page template, it should live with the rest of the page templates. That makes a bit of sense, but I like to keep things a bit more organized, especially if you have a lot of these page templates and your root directory is just getting crazy. So yeah, you can stick those in there. It is totally up to you. Template parts. So this is where we can put the parts that make up the page templates. So again, it keeps things modular, reusable, keeps your code nice and tidy. So by a part, it can be any part of a web page. So it could be something as big as a blog content area, or it can be something as small as a page header section. But it's just another way to break up your code into smaller chunks and keep things organized. What I like to do is to actually keep these names. So I've got testimonial here, testimonial.php, and in my SCSS modules file I would have testimonials.scss. In my JavaScript file I would have testimonials.js. So if you ever wanted to reuse that bit of code that handles testimonials in that certain way, you can go and grab those three files. It's really easy. So there's two functions that we need to know about when we're talking about template parts. The first is the one that you've probably all seen, get template part. And then I just put parts / because it's in that subdirectory. You don't need the file extension at the end. That'll just go and you can include that in any of your page templates, and it will go and get one of these things. The second one is interesting, and I don't know if you've come across the issue, but with get template part, you can't pass variables to it. So, well, there are ways, but if you set a variable in your page template and then call get template part, that variable won't be available to you. So a way around that is to use this next function. So this include locate template. It works pretty much the same way as get template part, except those variables that were in your page template will all now be available to you. So your template page, or your page template, will now look something like this. So that's nice and clean and organized. I'm liking the look of that. But there's still an issue with this page. And it's not actually an issue just on this page, but it's a code duplication issue, and it is with get header and get footer, because those two functions are going to be used on every page template in your whole website. And that kind of doesn't sit quite right with me. I think it would be nice to only load those once in your theme. And this is where theme wrappers come in. So I think I first came across theme wrappers in the Roots theme. I don't know if anyone's used Roots before. It's a great theme, great starter theme. I used it a few times. And they've got this idea of a theme wrapper. So basically what it does, it's probably best to show you it first and then come back. So you need an extra file in your theme root directory, and you'll call it something like base.php. And this file is where you can open your HTML, open your body tag, and then close those tags within the same template. So what normally happens with WordPress themes is that in header.php you'll open those tags, and then you'll probably close them in footer.php. I've never liked that. And this is a way to get around it. So it's all kind of pretty standard. So we're using get template parts. I split, so header.php I'll actually split into head and site header. And then this is Sage template path. That actually goes and gets the page template that should have been loaded. So base will get loaded first. It'll know what template you want. So if you're on the front page, it'll look for frontpage.php. If you're on a single post, it'll look for single.php, and it'll load that in. So all this other stuff is taken care of before you get to that template. So now your index.php could look like this. So there's no get header at the top. There's no get footer at the bottom. It's just what changes for your index.php and nothing else. So, in conclusion, there's no right way to build a WordPress theme, but there are some things that you can do wrong. It's just best to find what works for you, but give it a bit of thought, do things for a reason. Keep things organized, keep them modular, and that'll help them to be reusable in the future, saving you loads of development time. And most of all, have a bit of fun, because it should be good fun. Thank you very much. Time for any questions? Yeah. Anyone has any questions? Graham?
Keith, that was fantastic, very useful. Firstly, quick question, are you going to circulate the slides? Because there's some great stuff in there.
Yeah, I should put them up. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The next one is, I noticed your base PHP.
Yeah.
It didn't seem to be referred. How are you including that? Is that in index somewhere or what?
No. So, sorry, that's a very good point. I completely forgot to mention this. So wrapper.php is actually where that function exists.
Ah, right.
That does all that rerouting. So yeah, so that needs to be included. You can get that code. So I was supposed to come back to the slide. I skipped ahead and never came back. So if you go to this URL, the guys at Roots have written a blog post about the whole system. And from that website, you can click on their GitHub page, and you can actually go and grab that wrapper.php file, and then you can just use that straight away.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I've got one other second part to the question.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember Scott mentioning up in Camden that time the magic of locate template, but then you don't appear to use it later on. Is that because you've got a lot of...
Yeah, it's just because usually get template part is fine.
Right.
I think. Yeah. The only time I use the locate template one is if I need to pass a variable.
Scope of variables. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. Anything else? Any more questions? Go.
Oh, thank you.
No problem.